Shalom, shalom, friends. Long time no see. Hello, mother. So, I have come back on for another episode of Somebody's Calling Me of weekly reflections. And this week's topic is faith over fear. And boy, oh boy, is that a word, because how often do I operate under fear versus faith? And I feel like that is such a big part of God's heart, that we walk not in fear, but with courage and faith in Him. And I honestly believe that, I would have to study this more, but to walk in faith as opposed to fear is in lines with living righteously. And this is something that I've been reflecting on as I was reading my morning devotion, and it was in Proverbs 10. I'm in Isaiah. Now I'm in Job. Where am I going? Proverbs 10. All right. Where is it? Oh, yes. Okay. Proverbs 10, verse 24. And it is, man, this hit me like a ton of bricks. What the wicked dreads will overtake them. What the righteous desire will be granted. What the wicked dreads will overtake them. What the righteous desire will be granted. And I started thinking dreads, desire. Both words that start with D. What the wicked dreads will overtake them. What the righteous desire will be granted. And so both of those are somewhat rooted in something that preoccupies our mind. And one thing for sure, as I was doing a dive into this on ChatGPT, what the wicked dreads will overtake them is rooted in anxieties, worries, and fears. So it's like this preoccupation of the worst that could happen. And guess what? We keep living in that way, it will overtake us, according to the word. What the righteous desire will be granted. And that reminds me of petitioning, praying for God, asking God for this to happen. And then God grants it out of his goodness. And it reminded me of Matthew 25:26, the parable of the five of the talents, and what the master says to the one person with the one talent at the end. He says, "You wicked, lazy, evil servant." And I'm like, dang. And it reminded me of that because it always struck me, why did the master call that servant evil? Right here, 25:26. His master replied, "You wicked, lazy servant." Why did he call him wicked? And well, I'm sure I know there's a lot of studies on it. But I think part of it is that he wasn't living in faith. He wasn't first of all, he didn't know the master's character. And next, he was making up excuses to not take the risk and not live in faith. So that was in my reflection at the start of the week. And then I'm reading this book, Where Faith Lit the Way, about these pastors who started a church in Uganda, Watoto Church. My friend goes there. And they actually went into Kampala, Uganda, like right around the Civil War, when it was just in a very, very bad place. And the wife, Marilyn, talks about this really scary night one night, and there was murder, there was death, rape, robbery, all over the place, they were saying. And her husband left for 2 days at one point to go pick up a car because their other car had died. What could go wrong? 2 days. And during these 2 days, their block, it had happened before, but this time it came to their house. Their block was terrorized by a gang of soldiers. And during this time, they had heard all over at other times. Like one time, a gang of soldiers or a gang of robbers terrorized their block, and their house was the only one that wasn't broken into. This time around, her husband was gone. And their night guard warned her, and then she told him to run for it because his life would be on the line if they caught him. And so she was at home with her 3 kids, and they blocked the bedroom door with the dresser and everything. And finally, the knocks came to their kitchen door. And she said her kitchen door was made out of wood, old and rusty. And 25 men were banging on that kitchen door at like 3, 4 in the morning for 2 hours trying to get in, cursing, yelling, screaming, threatening her and her family. For 2 hours, an old rusty wooden kitchen door, and nobody could break the door down. I literally, like, that's supernatural angels, guardian angels. And the night guard had run, jumped over the fence, and was watching from a neighbor's roof. And he was also in amazement how these 25 men could not break down an old wooden kitchen door. And just earlier in the evening, she had read Isaiah 54, verse 13, where God is saying that no weapon formed against them shall prosper. And she said after they had left, after a couple hours of the men banging the door, threatening to kill her, rape her, kill her children, they left, and she was terrified. But then her fear welled up into anger at her husband, thinking, how could he bring me here? Because she wanted to leave and go back to Canada. But he was like, we need to stay here and build a church. And she was like, I'm going to give him a piece of my mind when he gets back. And she said that in her anger, deep, deep in her spirit, she heard a sweet, gentle voice. I'm just going to read the excerpt. Get up, Marilyn. Get up. I'll pretend to be God. Get up, Marilyn. Get up. Get up. I don't know. I didn't bring you here to be paralyzed by fear. I brought you here to be filled with faith. I brought you here. I brought you here. You may feel that your lack is big, but my provision is bigger. You may think your weaknesses are debilitating, but my strength will see you through. You may know your faults and fears as overwhelming, but my grace is enough. Will your fear be bigger than your faith, or will your faith be bigger than your fear? Ooh. I mean, have you ever been in that situation where someone's trying to bang down on your door? They're threatening to kill you. And our faith is to be bigger. God said, I brought you here. And what's a couple of things, like so many things stuck out to me, but one thing in particular that God says, get up. Get up. As she is just terrified and shaking like a leaf, it says in the book, he says, get up. And what I love about our Lord is that whatever we go through, he doesn't say, oh, I'm so sorry that your life sucks. Poor you. No, like at the pool, beautiful, with the man who was paralyzed for years, Jesus wasn't like, oh, I'm so sorry. He was like, get up, pick up your mat and walk. And God says, get up. The other thing that really stuck out to me is when he says, I didn't bring you here to be paralyzed by fear. I brought you here to be filled with faith. And that leads me to ask, what in our life, I'm not speaking to you, but also to me, what in my life feels so insurmountable that it's terrifying? But that's the very thing God is saying. I brought you here to be filled with faith at this situation rather than being paralyzed by fear. And it's often those things that God uses to equip us, to strengthen us. So that was very powerful. Looking at my life, anything that feels insurmountable, he says, that's the very thing that you shall fill yourself up with faith for. And so what in your life needs to be filled with faith instead of paralyzed by fear? And from my Jesus Calling devotion, wait, not that one. it was, which day was it? This was all this week. But essentially, the devotion said, whatever energy that I'm spending, like literally June 11th, do not let fear dissipate your energy. Instead, invest your energy in trusting me and singing my song, which is worship. Do not let fear dissipate your energy. Instead, use it, invest it in trusting me. Trusting him can fill us up with energy instead of letting fear suck it out of us. And this came to my mind a couple days ago as I was driving, and it's like a no dub, but it was just another reminder that we worship God not for anything related to our circumstances, but just because of how good he is, because of who he is, nothing to do with what, like, anything about our lives, you know? And when we worship him for who he is, that fills our lives up with energy. That fills my bones up with energy and joy. And what a privilege that God doesn't change. And we can always just worship him and find joy and satisfaction in that. So that is my weekly reflection for this week. Faith or fear? What is paralyzing me in fear that could be filling me up with faith? I'm curious to see what this next chapter will hold. All right, signing out. Goodbye. And real quick, yes, to add to my thought from earlier, I just had this epiphany, remembrance. Abraham believed God and it was accredited to him as righteousness. So there is a correlation between faith and righteousness. Yes, faith in Jesus Christ, and also just believing, like having faith that God is who he says he is and will do what he says he does. So there is a correlation. But study it. This is just what comes to me.